All right, good morning, everybody. It is Jay again, and it is August 12th here in Phoenix, Arizona, and it is mango season. Let me tell you what, this is a week's worth of picking mangoes out in the yard. It has been a very, very, very productive season this year. We've gotten some really nice sized mangoes out of the yard, and you can see they are all nice and perfect skin on these. It seems we get absolutely perfect mangoes here in the desert, which is shocking because the desert is not one place you think about when you think about tropical trees. But I'll tell you, the heat is required in order to give you really, really, really good fruit. And the hotter it seems to be, the faster plants grow, as long as you give them a few things in their environment that they need in order to thrive. And that's a little bit of what we'll be going over in today's video, is how to grow mangoes from seed, because everybody wants to grow a mango tree from seed. And I can see why. It is definitely a rewarding experience, and something that you and your kids can enjoy doing together. So we are going to be talking about how to grow a mango tree from seed. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is I have a bunch of homegrown fruit here, and the homegrown fruit is actually going to germinate better. I have not had the most success with store-bought fruit, and the reason for that is a couple reasons. One is sometimes the seed gets irradiated as it goes across the border as we import some of these fruits, and what that does is that kills the seed inside, and it doesn't allow you to grow mangoes. So if you've ever gotten one from the store and you haven't been able to get it to germinate, I would say definitely try one from a homegrown tree if you can get a hold of a homegrown mango. The other problem with mangoes is you don't want to get the seed too cold, which is kind of a bummer, because if you want to eat the fruit cold, you're going to put it in the refrigerator, and that's going to ruin or kill the seed inside. So if you want to have a tree, this thing has to not be refrigerated, and when you buy them at the store, you never know if they've been refrigerated or not. So the best mango seed that you can start from is from a homegrown mango, or from someone else's homegrown mango. If you can get some fruit from someone, that tree or that seed is going to germinate 100% of the time, versus store-bought, where it's either gotten too cold or it's been irradiated. And so that's a fruit that I would skip. So if you can get a hold of some fresh mangoes and some fresh mango seed, that is going to be the very, very best start that you can do to start getting a good mango tree, is to start with the seed. So my number one tip here would be get a fresh grown mango from someone, because you're going to be planting this from seed and you're going to be planting it fresh. Okay, so the first thing to do is to start with a good fruit and a good mango and a good seed. So normally I would pick something like this. This is a nice giant fruit punch mango. This is one that I would normally pick, but for this demonstration I'm going to be picking a smaller one, because I'm going to be working with one hand and I need to be able to kind of squish the fruit off of the mango. So I'm not going to be using this one, but this is normally something that I would pick for propagation, is a seed out of this one. This is a fruit punch, or I would pick one from maybe like this Malika. This is a really nice Malika right here too. Nice, perfect fruit. This is what we want to start with, is something like this. And actually, you know what? I'm just going to get a knife and I'm going to just cut one of these open, because these are, oh my gosh, these are good. Man, that is a pretty mango. Look at this thing. Look how juicy. Look how juicy this thing is. Just absolutely dripping with juice. Isn't that pretty? Wow, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the other side off this, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the seed out of this fruit, and then we can start from there. All right, so I've got both halves off of the seed, man, you can see that this is the juiciest mess I've ever seen. I mean, look at this. Look at the flesh on this mango. It's just, oh my gosh. Oh, it's just pure sugar. Pure sugar, guys. So this is a fruit punch mango. I am after the seed. So I am after this part right here, okay? Now, I know there are all types of different ways of doing this. I've seen a million different ways. I've seen where they'll plant the whole fruit. They'll take the seed out like this. They'll plant this. They'll wash this under the sink. They'll get all this extra flesh off of this seed. I've seen people dry the seed. I've seen people dry the seed and then cut open the actual seed and take the little embryo out of the seed. Okay, there's all types of different ways to propagate these. I've seen them take the bean out of the middle, the embryo out of the middle, and I've seen them put it in paper towel in a bag, in a Ziploc, and that kind of starts the little root on the mango. But I'm going to show you the way that I do it and the way that I get these things to germinate 100% of the time, because I do grow a lot of mango trees just for fun. Now on this one, I can feel it's already splitting. So if I put my thumb down in here, I can feel that this is already starting to split open. So what'll happen is there's already a root that wants to start in this, and there's a possibility that the tree and the embryo has already germinated inside of this seed, okay? But this is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the seed that all the fruit has been eaten off of, and I want it about this state. All right, there are two ways to get this started, and they're going to be wildly different on the way that these things grow, okay? So there's two ways to do this. You're going to be either starting them in the ground, or you're going to be starting them in pots. And most people start these in pots, which I'm telling you, if you can avoid doing that, if you can avoid that and actually grow them in the ground is going to be better and give you better results. And I will show you a couple examples of that here shortly. But the first thing I'm going to do is show you how I plant this seed and why I would leave it in this condition, okay? So you would ask yourself, well, you know, isn't that going to rot? You know, having all that extra on there isn't going to mold, having all that fruit, shouldn't I wash all that off? Okay, and you got to think about how things happen in nature. So in nature, the only thing that's really going to clean that off is, you know, birds and animals and bugs. But more than likely, most of that fruit makes it to the ground and it gets squashed and it gets stepped into the ground. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to show you exactly how I would plant this mango seed, and I'm going to show you how the tree plants its own mango seeds, okay? So what I would do if I wanted to plant this out in the yard is I would kind of move away a little bit of the mulch, and it helps to start them near or under shade of another tree, because that's how they start sort of naturally. So if they fall on their own, they're going to germinate. As a matter of fact, a lot of these fruit that I have missed, you can see they fall. Birds and bugs and everything kind of eat all that flesh away. And what you're left with there is the seed, okay? So if I leave these out here on their own, as bad of condition as this looks, this is actually going to germinate. You've got a little bit of that fruit around the seed that's been left for nutritional purposes, okay? So when they fall, if you notice when they fall naturally and they germinate on their own, that's the kind of environment that they germinate in, okay? They're not going to germinate out there in the open spaces. They're going to germinate where it's nice and thick, okay? Now you can see that I've got this one here with the fruit on it. So what I would do is I would take this, I would kind of move away my mulch, and then I would take this and I would shove this about halfway into the ground, okay? So it's about just like this, and I would just barely cover it up. Okay, now you can see that the dirt is going to absorb into a lot of that fruit, okay? So now as we bury this fruit, or this seed, just like that, guys, don't go crazy with it. Don't go too deep with it. It won't germinate. It needs to be kind of like just underneath the soil here, and then it needs to be protected by your mulch again, okay? So as you fill that back in, that will germinate, okay? Because you're keeping it nice and moist, and it also has a fair amount of that fruit pulp to get it started and to get nutrition going and to get all the little bugs and critters around that seed and around that root, okay? Now, a lot of these I pull out of the ground because they're constantly doing this on their own, right? So I don't want necessarily another mango this close to another mango tree, okay? Nor do I want this one really to germinate this close to this mango tree. This was just an example that I wanted to show you. So you might want to park it a little bit further out, but don't go too far out into the sun. And that's why people generally start these in pots, is because they don't know exactly where they want to put them yet. But if you'll start them, when I missed this morning, if you will start them in the ground, they're going to do better from the get-go. And the reason for that is they have a taproot, okay? So I've experimented with this. I've planted hundreds of seeds in pots, and I've planted hundreds out here in the ground, or they've planted themselves, meaning the fruit has fallen and germinated on its own. And I'm constantly going through here and I'm pulling out all these little mango trees, because all these little mango trees like to germinate underneath mama where I don't necessarily want them, right? Or maybe I do. Maybe I want to let them grow up through the canopy, because these are very rapidly growing trees, which I will show you here in just a minute, some comparisons between in the ground or potted. But this is basically the environment in which they would start, and planting a mango seed in a tree is that easy, guys. It's literally that's it. I'm done. I'm going to let that grow. As you keep that moist, a little bit of that fruit's going to rot around the seed, and it's going to provide nutrition to the next tree, okay? You don't ever want to get rid of all your nutrients or all your fruit. So oftentimes when a lot of these fruit fall, I will leave them on the ground so that the nutrition can go back into the next generation of fruit. Ooh, there's a nice one. We'll keep him. We'll keep him. We'll keep him. So we've got 3 more to add to the pile there. These over here, they're already gone, to the point where I'm just going to leave these now actually for the tree. Sometimes I'll take and squish these open and let a lot of that juice and pulp back to the tree. I mean, could you eat that? Sure, you could eat some of it, but I would much rather give a little bit of that nutrition back to the trees instead of robbing them every year. Here's another one. Instead of taking away everything every year, I want to give a little bit of that back to the plant. I mean, could you plant these? Absolutely. These would absolutely germinate. Okay, and it is really that easy. Okay, now let's go over the potted version of this. I'm going to use this seed right here that I just took out of this mango, since I buried my other one. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to do an example of pots, and I will show you the difference on how these things grow. Okay, so this is going to be going into a pot, so this is going to be a little bit of a different situation, and we are going to actually try to wash off the majority of this fruit because it's going in a container. And when you put things in containers, you stand a higher risk of developing mold and rot, but it can be done absolutely the same way. You just want to get the majority of this fruit off. We got it pretty good there. You guys can see that. Okay, now we got to find us a pot. All right, so we're gonna need us a pot. So let's see what we can find. And this is another thing people screw up on, is the size of the pot and the material, the grow medium that they put in the pot, okay? So let's see if we can find us something in here. All right, here we go. This is what we want. Let's grab this one and come out here and talk about it. Swamp cooler's a little noisy, so let's get out here where we can discuss this a little better. Okay, so pot size is critical. Okay, you do not want to go too big too quickly, or this will indeed rot. The biggest reason people rot plants out in pots is that the pot is too big. There is too much soil there that stays wet that roots are not drinking in. So you want to keep it a little bit smaller if you can, and definitely if you're doing something like mangoes, because you're going to have 500 of these seeds, and so you don't want a whole bunch of pots and material around because it's just not necessary, okay? So what I like to use is these white pots here. These are roughly 5 inches by 5 inches. They stand approximately 7 inches tall. They are a white plastic and they are reusable. I have had these for almost 10 years now, and I reuse them quite a bit. What's nice about these is they are skinny here and tall, which is what you need for a mango, because it's got a taproot, and it will only have that taproot it'll have a taproot for at least 3 years and no other side feeding roots, okay? So you need it to be a little bit skinnier and a little bit deeper. It's gonna act kind of like a pecan. You almost wanna grow it like a pecan, okay? Because the taproot is critical on these plants, okay? So you can also see that it has some drainage material. Some drainage holes. They are on the sides of the pot, and they are also on the bottom of the pot. So you can see that this drains really, really, really well. You can also see that there is a water line on this pot right about there, because I grow these using the bog method, and they are sitting entirely in water, which you would think that's going to rot the roots out, and in most cases it would, but you need to select the right soil, and if you select the right soil, then you're not going to have any problems with rot. It all comes down to the size of the container and the material that you have put in it on whether or not you're going to have a successful mango tree, okay? So what is the material in here? So the material in here is literally 50% peat moss, 50% perlite, okay? Mix those two together. Those are, let's call it an inert growing medium, okay? You don't want a lot of nutrition in the actual soil. You want it to be more or less just kind of neutral, okay? It's just a growing medium. You're just trying to get the roots in the ground and get it started, okay? So when you've got material like this, especially peat moss that is acidic, you're not going to have a lot of fungal issues that you would if you're using a potting mix, okay? So I do not use a potting mix when I plant all of my seedlings, which I can show you some later. They are all grown in this exact same method. So they're grown in these 5x5s with this peat moss, okay? So how would I plant, or how would I do this now? Well, you've got a couple choices on what you do as far as getting it started from this point, okay? To me, the easier way to do this is you just take the seed and you lay it on top, and you want to squish it in about halfway down. You want to replicate like an animal stepping on it. You know, like a cow comes through and steps on that seed and kind of squishes it into the ground a little bit, okay? So it's going to be like sort of half buried, okay? Now, having this moist peat moss and perlite around it, and it's covered by its own shell, okay? So I'll show you a different method on this if you guys want to extract the embryo out of the actual seed. But this is the best way that I found to do it, is to kind of pack all this down, make sure that seed's not completely buried, almost buried, but not completely. What that does is that allows it to, one, that's how it would fall in nature because it's flat. So it's going to fall on its flat side out in nature. All these mangoes, you see, they fall flat. So that seed is going to be flat, and you need to let it remain flat, okay? So you can see there that it's just kind of under the surface. Hopefully you guys can see that. Just under the surface there. And now that has an opportunity for that embryo, that root, to come out, and the top of the tree to come out of the side of the seed here, okay? The taproot will go on down to the bottom, and your plant will be about 6 inches tall by the time the taproot has hit the bottom, and then it's time to up pot the plant. Now, having this method, you don't need to keep necessarily any humidity in, because that fruit, a little bit of that fruit and that cardboard husk that's around the seed is actually going to hold water on its own, and the perfect amount of water, really. So you really don't have to water these too much. You just want to keep them moist until you start to see a root to develop, okay? Now, would you put this out in the full sun in the middle of the summer and try to grow this? No, you wouldn't, because it would cook too fast, okay? So believe it or not, you can actually even start these indoors. I've started a lot of these in my kitchen. I've got a little spot there where I put these little seedlings until they start to germinate, and then I start to bring them out to the greenhouse. Now, a lot of people aren't going to have a greenhouse, but that would obviously be the place that you would park this, and it'll get a good start right off the bat because you've got nice humidity in here, and that plant is not going to dry out, okay? So what you would do is kind of put it back here where it's a little bit shadier. It's nice and cool in here. It's out of the direct sun, and after it starts to germinate, then you can start to do something else with it. Now, I'll show you a couple other. Now, these aren't mangoes. These aren't mangoes, but these are actually wax apples, and you can see that doing this method works really, really well. These are also seedlings. Little seedling trees. And you can see that they work really, really well with that method. You can actually see some roots coming out the bottom of these plants. Can you grab another one here? I mean, look at that. Beautiful little plants. And I start a lot of them in these pots, or I'll also use a lot of the liners. These are actually black Suriname cherries. These are all seedlings too. And let's pull one of these out of here. And you can see that this one's a little bit taller. This is about 4 inches by 4 inches by about 12 inches. And you can see the plant is just as happy as can be. I mean, I don't think you get more happy seedlings, right? And if you turn them over too, you can see that there are roots coming out the bottom, okay? So these are all grown in the bog method, where these are submerged, sitting in actual water, okay? See the mulberries? Put one of these out of here. Ah. Now this is a cutting, but this is done basically with the same method. So you can see that in fact really works well. Okay, so as an alternative, what would be another way to kind of keep your seed from drying out? All right, so now comes in the old Ziploc bag Ziploc bag trick. And I don't really particularly care for this method because you just gave yourself an extra step. I mean, if you had just left it alone and done it like this, you'd be fine. But let's take this out and let's do another example here, because most people end up taking that embryo out of the actual seed husk, you know, which I don't recommend, but that it is one way to do it. But now you're going to have to do another couple extra steps. Okay, let's get him down here. Okay, let me pause it while I get this set up real quick. Okay, so you don't have a greenhouse. You're sort of stuck with this situation now. You are going to be making a greenhouse, okay? And it is as simple as taking the pot and putting a bag over it to keep the humidity in to the seed, okay? But if we hadn't have taken the husk away, we wouldn't have to do this necessarily, because that husk protects that seed and keeps it nice and humid. So now we've built a little greenhouse for it, okay? But sort of the problem with this is a couple things. One, you're gonna have to take this off every once in a while and let this air out. Let it get some fresh air in there, okay? You'll see humidity start building up inside this bag, right? Which is good and bad. It's gonna be probably too much, and it tends to kind of rot the seed out, okay? The other thing that happens is this gets super heated. So if you have this type of a scenario, and it's anywhere out in the sun at all, like you got a dead tree, because you've cooked it now. You're gonna cook it inside this bag, okay? So the preferred method really is just to leave it in the husk. But if you have to do this situation, which also does work, well, then you're also gonna have to now keep that shaded and cool. And there's not a lot of places like that in Arizona, right? Greenhouse or your kitchen tends to be the best places to start mango trees, okay? Now let's go over a few of the benefits and why you would want to grow your own mangoes. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you some size differences, okay? So why would you plant in the ground versus in the pot? And I'm going to show you a couple examples of some potted trees, and I'm going to show you a few examples of in the ground trees. And I think you'll agree that starting in the ground is probably the way to go, even though it sounds counterintuitive and it seems like it's going to take twice as long to get what you're wanting, but it actually takes half the time, okay? So starting them in the ground is probably definitely the way to go. Okay, so here you see this is a Hayden mango tree. Okay, you can see here's a mango on it, nice big Hayden. Okay, so dropped a seed last year. Okay, so here's actually dropped a bunch because there's always babies underneath these. Okay, so it dropped a seed right here. And this is native soil because this is between the wells. You've got a well here and you've got a well here. So this one actually germinated in native soil, okay? So this is a 1-year-old seedling. Like, let's look at a grafted tree right next to it, okay? This is a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old grafted Hayden, okay? You can see that the trunk's not huge, it's about 2 inches, okay? Because this is a grafted tree. The seedling tree, however, is almost the same size after about a year. Okay, you can see it's got a nice little trunk on it. And if we come up, not sure how well it's going to show, but let's come up here. And we're up to about almost my height on this seedling mango, okay? So this is about a year, maybe a year and a half of growth out of a seedling tree, and you can see that it's almost the same height actually as the grafted one right next to it, okay? Now we'll go back here and we'll look at a couple more because these things are everywhere. Let's get back here. Okay. So yeah, you can see that underneath every tree, this is from this year, actually. Actually, there's the mango right there, guys. check that out. There is the mango. So you can see that they fall and they rot, right? Oh man, this is neat. Okay, so there's the rotted fruit from this year. You can see it laying right on top of the surface. Do you guys see it? And there is your little 1-year-old, or not even a month old, because there's still fruit on it. There's still fruit on it. Let's come up here. There's still fruit on it. So this is like not even a month old little mango tree, okay? But if you'll look underneath all of these are all seedlings. These are all little seedling trees. You see it? Let's go back in here. Another seedling. Another little seedling tree, doing really good back here. Oh. This is a really tall one here. So this is a seedling also. And you can see that this one is, oh, I don't know, right about 8 feet compared to the other mangoes that are around it. That is a seedling. Actually had another tree planted here, and you can see when all these mangoes fall, see, they all fall into these areas here, and then you just get all these seeds. So of course they're going to germinate. Of course you're going to get a mango forest. Okay. Now let's go look at another one over here, since it's probably the tallest. So this is going to be a 2-year-old seedling. And this one also, same situation. It fell underneath mama tree in the ground, and so it got to put that taproot down. That taproot is, man, probably 6 feet deep. So we've got little mango alley over here. Bunch of mangoes still on the tree. The one I want to show you though is right here. So this is another seedling. This tree right here. Right here. And that is probably, well, at least 10 feet, if not 12. And you can see that it also germinated under mama. Here's the grafted tree. This is a fruit punch. And then here's the seedling right next to it. And it kind of shot up through this little space right through there, and then it made its way up and has now gotten out into the sun and is now growing taller. Okay, so that is a 2-year-old in the ground tree. Let me show you a 2-year-old potted tree, and I think we'll get it now. Okay. So this is a 2-year-old potted tree. They don't like pots. Mangoes don't like pots. They've got a root system that has a very long taproot. And once that gets kind of compromised or coiled in the bottom of a pot, it's sort of a wrap as far as the growth. You've sort of bonsai'd the tree, okay? So that's why grafted trees grow so slow, you know, especially in Arizona, is because they've been bonsai'd. And they've been bonsai'd basically by the pots and by their root systems. But if people want mangoes, that's the way we have to do them. Like, I can't come plant a bunch of these and graft these in your yard, you know. So we sell these, and I sell seedlings, and I also sell grafted trees that I do myself. I do a whole slew of these mangoes. But this is a little mango tree in a pot for 2 years, and you can see the difference. I'll show you a couple more. Okay, so these are all mango seedlings. All of these. Got them everywhere. These are to be grafted in the future. And you may say, well, yeah, they look good though, you know? Some more over here. These are all seedlings. These are all seedlings. Seedlings, 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 even some growing into the afternoon sun here. These are also seedlings, and that would be torched if that was a grafted tree. That thing would be absolutely torched, and you can see that it is actually putting on a bunch of new growth out here in the afternoon sun in August. We don't have any leaf burn. Actually look really good, okay? So there is a difference. There is definitely a difference between growing things from seed in the ground or in pots. Guys, there's a huge, huge difference. So that is exactly how I do my seedlings, okay? Now let's talk about some other things, some benefits of this. Okay, so let's say you don't have access to mango trees or grafted mango trees, or let's say you live somewhere very far from civilization and you want to grow some of these plants yourself. Well, seeds are usually easy to acquire and a little bit easier to acquire than plants sometimes, okay? And no matter what, as long as you can get a mango tree to survive, you can always change the variety of what it is, right? So let's say you grow a mango tree, okay? So it's going to be either polyembryonic or it's going to be monoembryonic. So it's either going to be true to type, it's either going to be exactly like the mango you just ate, or it's going to be a new variety, okay? So I don't care which one it is. I'm going to grow it till it's fruiting, and then I'm going to try the fruit. And if I don't like the fruit, well, then I'm going to cut the tree down and I'm going to regraft the variety onto something that I want. But at least I've got the good root system from the seedling tree, okay? So I definitely encourage people to grow, in particular, 3 things from seed here in Arizona: mangoes, avocados, and loquats. Those are 3 that you want to grow from seed, and then you can graft onto them later if it's something that you don't like. Chances are it's going to be something you like. I've grown loquats from seed. I've grown them all from seed and tried them all. Big loquat seedling over here, right there. It's one of the bigger loquats in the valley, and it's also in full afternoon sun, and it's also green. So seedlings are the way to go. That's why I tell people, if you're wanting an avocado tree in particular, you need to plant a bunch of seeds everywhere, okay? And whatever germinates, that means it's germinating in a place that it was happy to be. People take trees, especially potted trees, and they force them into some of these situations where they may not grow well, okay? So by seeding things, especially things you can get fairly cheap and easy, like avocado pits and mango seeds, well, then you can place those pretty much anywhere in your yard, and wherever they germinate and grow, that's where they want to be. How do you think there's such big avocado trees and mango trees in Phoenix? Okay, they planted seeds right outside their door, right where it was nice and cool, and that plant germinated 30 years ago, and now people in Phoenix have very large seedling avocado trees and mango trees. That's what those are, okay? Now, like I said, you can graft it if you don't like the way that the fruit actually tastes, okay? And let's go over a little bit about types of seeds, okay? Because if you're wanting to grow fruit trees, there's basically 3 types of seeds that you need to know about. And if you can grow those 3 the way they're supposed to be, you'll have much, much more success. Okay, so the first type of seed is going to be fresh seed. Almost all tropicals, almost every single one of them, require fresh seed. So what does fresh seed mean? Fresh seed doesn't mean 3-day-old seeds. It doesn't mean, week-old seeds. It means fresh seeds. It means right out of the fruit. So to show you an example of that, here is a wax apple. Okay, this is an example of a tropical tree. This is one that you would eat fresh, okay? So I'm gonna take a bite. Oh, that's good. Oh wow, that's really good. Okay, now I'm gonna take the seeds out of it. So you can see that it's got two seeds. I may have eaten one. Here's the other. Right here. That's exactly what you want to plant. So now I would take this seed, just as it is, and I would take it and I would put it in that pot, just like I did that mango seed. And that is exactly, just press it down in the soil. And that's exactly what these are. These are seeds from that tree. So fresh seed is going to be a lot of tropical trees. So it's going to be things like avocado, mango, Suriname cherries, jabuticaba, canepas or Spanish limes, almost all tropicals. Let's call it starfruit, guavas. All these you're going to want to start from fresh seed, meaning how I just did it. Eat the fruit, plant the seed, okay? That's where a lot of people screw up, because they let that seed dry out, and that embryo is living, and it's typically large, like on a mango or on an avocado, it's a little bit larger, okay? And so that's how it's able to grow in the dark, because it's got a lot of seed material there to give it good energy so that it can start underneath mama tree, okay? The second type of seed is going to be hard seeds. Let's go out here and grab a few of those. All right, so I'm out here on the street. I don't know if you can see this because I can't see my own phone here, but I'm gonna just go ahead and grab a handful of these seeds, and then we'll go back there and we'll discuss them. Okay, so these are going to be what we call hard seed, okay? These are basically seeds that would live through the apocalypse, okay? They've got an extremely hard shell, and this is going to usually be a bean type tree. So all your mesquites, your palo verdes, your ironwoods, white lead tree, which is what this is off of, they're all going to be contained in a hard seed, okay? And this hard seed can be planted dried. They damn near last forever. You can basically plant these 6 years later and they will still germinate. Now, these typically germinate under one of two conditions. One is that they either get abraded, so a lot of this shell coating, as they kind of rub against each other, it's going to abrade the shell coating, and then these seeds will germinate. The other way that you can germinate these is through hot stratification, which is more or less pouring boiling water over them, okay? And I know that sounds crazy and it might not work, but it really is. That's the hot water is really what's going to activate this type of seed, and that's how this can sit out there on the street and basically be viable 5 years later, because these seeds are absolutely protected in this hard shell, okay? So that's basically the second type, and now let's go over the third type, which is going to be more or less a cold stratification of seeds, and that's going to be things like your stone fruits, and your peaches, your apples, your pears. So let's go see if we can find some of those. Okay, as we kind of dig down in here a little bit, I'm going to show you guys these peach pits. So you can see down in here, you've got all these peach pits, right, from the previous years of peaches, and these are going to be cold stratified. So what that means is these require a little bit of cold in order to germinate. So these are probably the easiest of them all, in the fact that you just basically just leave them outside or plant them. So what'll happen is the peach will fall just like the mangoes. It'll rot, okay, and then over the winter it'll get its chill hours sitting out here, right? Especially if they're down in the ground a little bit, not sitting up here on the surface, but if they're just pushed slightly underneath the ground like this, they'll get their cold stratification the first winter, okay? So the peach will fall, right? You'll eat the peach, or the peach rots, and then it sits there over the next winter, and then all of a sudden you'll have all these peaches start germinating, or apples start germinating, because they've had a winter in order to kind of sit out here and get their chill, and then they'll kind of grow from there. So oftentimes you'll have literally like a mango growing right next to a peach tree, you know, and one needs heat and one needs cold, and you're like, how did this even happen? Well, that's how it happened. A lot of these seeds are just kind of waiting to grow. Now, if they don't germinate after a year, they're pretty much gone. Like, that shell will abrade and you won't have much left of these pits sitting out here. But if that first year you want them to grow, you literally just take and squash peaches into the ground, squash mangoes into the ground. And I know that sounds like a caveman way of doing things, right? But that's really how nature does it, and that's how you'll have the most success. Oftentimes we try too hard on things. All right, I'm gonna go over one more thing on this video, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. I think I got it long enough here, but it also included basically how to germinate every type of seed, guys. So basically this is a video on how to germinate every type of seed for every type of tree, because they're gonna fall into one of those three categories, okay? Wow, look at all the finger limes today. They're gonna fall into one of those categories, okay? But the main thing to remember is you wanna germinate seeds where it's nice, cool, and moist and humid, okay? That's how these things want to get their start. Now, they'll get blasted by sun here in Arizona eventually once they get bigger, but if you can get things acclimated, they'll do a lot better, okay? So another question would be, well, what do I do with that once it germinates and starts to grow? Like, what's the next step? Because I chose to do it potted instead of putting it in the ground. In the ground, there is no other steps. You just water the tree and keep it moist, because you want that taproot to go really, really deep, okay? Now, let's say you did the potted situation and you're like, well, what do I do with it now? Like, I've got it about this tall. That's about as tall as you're gonna want it. You'll probably want to actually up pot it before this point, because if you don't, the roots have already hit the bottom on a mango. It's just got the one root in there instead of a bunch of feeder roots like this wax apple has. So the next step would be not to go too big, okay? So what I like to do on them is I like to go from this size, which is the 5 by 5 by 7. I like to step them up to a 5 gallon, okay? A 5 gallon is perfect because it's got a small opening and it's got a deep pot, which is what you're wanting for mango trees. Every tree happens to like a different pot, and you really got to know which plants are which as far as potted goes. I mean, that could be a whole nother video on its own. Like, potted trees require certain pots and certain sizes to make them really, really thrive. And that's one of the keynotes of getting good at being a nursery, is knowing what size pots to keep them in and to give people trees in, and not putting too big of a pot with a small plant in it. That's not what you want. You actually rather have a little bit of a bigger plant to kind of start with, because now these roots are gonna just pour into the ground. I'm not gonna leave them in these 5s much longer. See, they either need to be stepped up a size or they need to be planted in the ground, because things do start getting root bound. But you can get them out of that also by cutting and scarring the roots, but that could be a whole nother video on its own too, okay? So the next step would be to go up in size, and you got to go up in nutrition now, okay? So there is no nutrients in this pot or this soil or this network of doing things, okay? Because you've got perlite, you've got peat moss. Neither one of those are going to provide much nutrition to the plant. The peat moss maybe a little, okay? So now you got to start getting them into some nutrition. So you're going to step them up to a 5 gallon pot, okay? And now you're going to be using a good high quality planting compost, okay, or a potting mix. Now you need some nutrients in there, but you don't want too many nutrients in there because you still got a very small tree, and it doesn't require a lot, but it does require a little bit because otherwise it's going to stop growing in this pot after a certain size. It's going to be tapped out on nutrients. That's it. Okay, so now it needs more space. So it's going to go into this, and it's going to remain in this one for at least another year. I mean, it takes them, like I told you before, it takes them a while to even kind of foundation into this. So you definitely 5. Leave them in there for several years. Then the next size up is going to be a 15. You'll put them in a tall 15. Because of the type of roots that they have, you want to remain that small opening and have that deeper pot versus a shorter, wider pot. Good luck with that. Good luck with that, okay? They're just not going to establish. You need some height on these, and there's a reason why nurseries, and me in particular, choose a certain size pot for the certain plants that I give people, okay? It's not for fun because I like people to move around heavy things. It's because that's the root system that's required. I mean, look at these figs in August. Like, nobody else's figs look like this in August. They're completely roasted. And these are in pots, okay? So these should be roasted. The ones in the ground, you really have no excuse for, because those are already tapped into the ground, just like your big mangoes or your seedling mango trees, okay? So, wow, I've gotten this really long, but hey, there's a lot of useful information in this, and if you actually sit through all the way to the end, you'll get pretty good at growing these things. It's very simple. People overcomplicate this, okay? Use the right soils and the right pot sizes, and you're good to go. Get the fruit at the right time of the year and get it in the ground and get it planted, you're good to go. If you see mangoes start falling on the tree, off the trees, right, you know it's time. You know it's time to start to germinate these, because now this is when they are going to germinate on their own, okay? So be very wary of seasons. Like, if you want mangoes to germinate super easy, well, definitely pick the time that they're fruiting and dropping some of this fruit so that you can use those on your future orchard. Let's see how many mangoes we got left over here. Ooh, yeah. Still looking good. Still looking good. Okay, so people overcomplicate this plant. It's a very slow growing plant. That's the situation with it, or that's why people struggle with it so bad, is that it is a slow growing plant, okay? Man, the fruit. Fruit there, fruit on the ground. You pick up what you can, you give the birds the rest, right? And there's 5 more. So yeah, it has been an incredible incredible year on mangoes. You can hear all the lovebirds around me here. So yeah, it is possible, guys. It is possible to get yourself a lot of fruit off of homegrown trees, and I definitely encourage a lot of people to get into mangoes, although they are a little tougher. I will tell you that. Mangoes and avocados are probably the 2 toughest plants here. And it's because people overthink them, and they're not patient. They're not willing to wait the time that it takes to get these fruits. Because you got to remember, mangoes are kind of reverse dog years. You know, if they've been in the ground 7 years, they're going to act like a 1-year-old planted citrus, or a 1-year-old planted pomegranate, or a 1-year-old planted mulberry or peach or pear. Because they're so slow, the growth rate on them is just so slow. But you guys have really nothing to lose here. I mean, it's just time now and patience. So you might as well plant something, because the tree is either going to be good, or you can graft it later if you don't like the variety, and your seedling root system is going to be the very best, and you will have a tree for many years to come. It's also a very fun project to do with your kids. I get my kids involved in this all the time, even grafting stuff, because they learn how to do things, and they also get to change the varieties to the things that they want, okay? Now, what do I feed these things is probably the last question I'm going to answer here, and that is compost. I feed them pure compost. I make a bunch. I actually sell it. If anybody ever wants any compost, I make compost for fruit trees, and that's what I plant all my fruit trees in. So if you want the same success, come on by. I can help you out. Even if you don't buy anything here, I don't care. I can still give you some good advice on how to get to the point at which I have gotten to, because I want everybody to enjoy this hobby here. And I know once you start getting that amount of mangoes, you'll enjoy it. Although it is a lot of work to process them now. So now I have to go in and cut up all those mangoes. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you for watching. If you made it almost the full hour here with me. But just know that I do really, really enjoy growing mango trees, and actually a lot of things from seed. Like, if you saw the benefits of that over grafted trees, you would definitely try some on your own, especially some of these harder plants to get going, because believe it or not, from a seed, they're way easier. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you have not, and put a little like on this video. I typically don't get out here very much in the summer because it's just too hot, but at the same time, that is when all the tropical fruit is producing. So it's like, if I miss this season, everybody misses this season, then they've missed pretty much, let's call it, all the tropical fruit. Okay, your black sapotes, white sapotes, mangoes, guavas, starfruit, Barbados cherries will be fruiting here again soon. Surinams will be fruiting again soon. Wompies. I mean, there's all kinds of things that actually enjoy the heat and fruit during the heat. But if you can get yourself a microclimate like you can see around here, where I'm pretty much in the dark or in the shade all the time, so it's 20 degrees cooler back here, and you're also getting all this tropical fruit. All right, guys, thank you for watching.